Hi, Misha here, and this is a bit of a viewer request, and this will just be an impromptu quickie. If this were on my personal channel, I'd probably just do a black box video, but people like something to look at, I suppose. So, I brought out a couple. This is a pretty old import of a, as it's marked, FPK Dragunov. That's what it's marked as. This is a Tennessee Guns TGI import. This is a Romanian 7.62 x 54R DMR type gun. And also, just for a couple of talking points, I brought out a random Wasser that I literally found in the corner. That's just kind of my places. They're just randomly Wassers and whatnot. And this is a modern, current, last year or two century import Wasser 10. This one I have set up, as you can tell, as a side folder. But, yeah. And the point of this video, as the title suggests, is about the recent, and at this time, November 12, ongoing situation with Classic Firearms and Pioneer Arms Corporation USA and their recent selling and kind of debacle over that batch of so-called military surplus PSLs. And from what I've heard, at least from customers that did get one in at their dealer, they were 1975 dated trunnions. I'm going to do another video on my personal channel, more opinion oriented. This one's just a fact. Also, for a history of these guns, we did a pretty extensive video last year, so we'll link it in the description, and then you can check that out if you want to know. Essentially, the PSL is Romania's poor man's Dragunov. When they were making this, the relationship between Romania and Russia was not great. Plus, economy. So they basically took the RPK and they scaled it up to fire 7.62 x 54. They put a scope rail on it, and they equipped them with a copy of the Russian 4-power military scope. And while the PSL, as it became known, was a semi-automatic only 10-round magazine gun, since it was based on the original AKM RPK, it did have a 3-axis pin trigger group. The rear pin held the trigger itself, the middle pin would hold the hammer, and the front pin would hold the out-of-battery safety, which is not on this one. This is often referred to as a rate reducer, which in a full auto gun, it does incidentally serve that purpose, but originally it was incorporated into the AK design to make sure the gun would not go off until the bolt was fully forward and locked into position. Good idea. Only issue: the ATF has a pretty strict view of machine guns. This dates back to 1934 and the National Firearms Act, where the machine gun was regulated. And then in the 1960s, they started a policy of once a machine gun, always a machine gun. Meaning you could not take, for example, an FAL, modify the receiver, and have it as a semi-auto. Basically, all guns had to be purpose-built from the factory on a semi-auto frame, receiver, what have you. Okay? Then in 1986, the machine gun registry was closed, meaning no new machine guns could be registered. Even before that, though, people don't realize, in 1968, as part of the Gun Control Act, it was no longer allowed to import Class 3 NFA type guns for civilian sales, meaning all the full autos from the 80s, like your MP5s and Chinese AKs and such, actually were imported as semi-autos and they converted over here. And that's nearly 20 years before the registry was closed. So, I point all this out to talk about the PSL. Even though it is semi-auto only, there's never been a full auto military version. When Century Arms, TGI, IO, and maybe one or two others wanted to import these for civilian sales, they could not just grab standard ones, either new or surplus, off the production line and sell them over here because of that third pin. The reason the third pin is no-no. Okay, you have a gun, right? Well, the ATF and the way our gun system is set up, you need to track a gun. Well, which part is the gun? Is it the barrel? Some countries it is. Would it be the bolt? No. You had to pick a part of the gun to be the quote-unquote firearm, the serial part. And that on an AK type gun is the receiver. Now on a milled AK, this is all one piece. On a stamped AK, you have the lower stamped shell and you have the upper machined trunnion. This is the trunnion and receiver are considered one piece. This is the gun. Likewise, when you're trying to determine if a gun is semi or full auto, or can be readily converted to full auto, you need to pick a feature or features that differentiates it. Well, when it comes to the AK, it's that third pin, which would be right here, the Y stamp on the receiver, but see there's no hole. They decided that hole with the pin for the rate reducer is what they would make the determining factor. So if there's a hole in the receiver here, it's a machine gun. If there's not, it can be considered a semi-auto. In the past, importers tried to weld these up, especially there was a batch of Chinese AKs that came in, Mac 90s with welded up holes. Nope, that once a machine gun, always a machine gun thing comes into play. So the ATF did a recall and those guns had to be surrendered. Likewise, in the 90s, there were a batch of Yugoslavian M76 rifles, very similar to this gun, that came in and had to be recalled because they had the third pin hole in the receiver. And then more recently, back around 2012, 2013, although some people say it dates back to 2007, neither here nor there, Century Arms did accidentally bring in a batch of PSLs that had the third pinhole in the receiver, and the ATF made them recall them. Century took them back, they torched the receiver, and they took the rest of the parts, the front end and everything, and they rebuilt them on Nodak Spud receivers and sold them off 2014, thereabouts. Also, kind of a little bit more recently, right around this time, November of 2015, IWI, with their very first batch of Galil Ace pistols, and it was an accident, imported them with the third pin. Nothing was on it, it was just, there was the hole in the receiver and a pin through it. Again, the ATF made them recall them and destroy them. I did talk with them at the time, and was told that the sample that IWI submitted to the ATF had the two pins, and it was just a manufacturing mistake over in Israel that the ones they actually shipped had the three pins. Okay, everyone's human, no problem. IWI continued on. People were given the option to either surrender their guns and get a replacement when they were available with the two pin, or to get a full money back refund. Again, the ATF didn't treat people like criminals, but they were clear that the whole, oh, I lost it overboard, during a boating accident, or I sold it to a dark stranger at a gun show, excuses that have been used in the past would not fly. They want to know, they either want the gun, well actually they wanted the gun one way or the other, and they were going to get it. So, fast forward. We've had companies in the past bring over PSLs, and what they did, they were either all new manufacture, or they would take military guns, strip them off their original 3-pin receiver, and rebuild them on a new dedicated 2-pin receiver. And that's enough, because this otherwise is a sporting gun with a thumbhole stock, 10-round mag. It actually can be imported as a sporting rifle under the 89 restrictions. So it's pretty cool. That's why they all have the Romanian trigger, stuff like that. Centerfire Arms just last year reintroduced the PSL at a new spiffy price point, I admit, $2,000 plus, and these are all new manufacturer guns. So, back to our original topic. Pioneer Arms, PAC, and Classic Firearms bin. Last week they put up a video on their YouTube channel talking about Romanian military surplus PSLs. And they were, what, 1,700 guys? I forget right this second. But, cheaper than the Centuries. Although they would have some wear and tear. How did they get them in with the 3rd pin? That's the question. The thing is, as soon as the 3rd pin was pointed out, they took down their video, and also their website went down. Those are the facts. This is what's been told to me by people who've contacted them directly. They've essentially told them, oh, we have all of our paperwork in order. These were approved for import. No worries. But then people would ask them, what about the 3rd pin? And they kind of would go silent. Often Classic would refer people to Pioneer, and Pioneer would refer people to Classic. Kind of a circle. There are restrictions on surplus guns. Typically, a military gun can only be imported as surplus once it is 50 years old. Yes, there are exceptions, blah blah blah, but that's kind of how that goes. They did not start making the PSL until the 1970s, even though it dates back to 1968. So these are not 50 years old, therefore not CNR or technically surplus, at least as far as the law goes. Yeah. They did not do anything to the inside. The out-of-battery safety was still intact. No blocking bars. They basically just took straight PSLs, including having the bayonet lug, and brought them over without alterations. So how did they get these in country? The PSL has been legal for import for 20 years. They did fill out a Form 6, which is essentially a customs form, meaning you pay your taxes, your tariffs, and all that. If they get approval to import a gun, you do not have to submit a sample every time a gun gets imported. Having a Form 6 filled out properly does not mean the ATF has done a visual inspection of the gun. So if you call or contact the ATF saying you file paperwork to import a PSL or WAS or anything else, in the past, they've all looked like this with the 2-pin receiver. No problem. Century's currently importing these again. No reason at all to deny Pioneer Arms to do the same. However, that's not the same thing as saying you have approval for your version if it's different from this. Now, if Pioneer Arms submitted a sample to the ATF with the 3 pins, and if the ATF approved it with the 3 pins, then they've done everything by the book, and the ball was wholly dropped on the ATF's end. What they do, who knows? They could grandfather them in, they could do a recall, even though it's not really honest, or they could set a whole new precedent. That's a thing. But as if what happened with the IWI guns. Okay, IWI submitted a 2-pin hole example to the ATF for approval, which is what they approved with the ACE, but then they accidentally imported 3-pin holes. Obviously those got recalled because that was not what was approved. Also goes to show you that when Form 6s get filled out just for the straight import, they don't always check that kind of thing, especially such a minor thing like that. So if Pioneer submitted a sample that was a 2-pin, and then they accidentally imported 3 pins, yeah, that can be resolved. Mistakes happen. However, and there definitely would be a recall in that instance. However, if Pioneer never even submitted a sample to the ATF and just went with the Form 6 by itself, that means the AK never even, the ATF never even looked at this rifle. Well, not this one, but that rifle. Therefore, never said yes or no. And that's pretty bad. What I think happened, Pioneer Arms is a relatively new importer, new company. I think they saw that the PSL was always semi-auto, the other companies were bringing them in, and they simply did not realize they were rebuilding them in Romania on all new receivers. They just brought them over, thinking, hey, it's a semi-auto rifle. I don't know that, though, so we're kind of at the end of what I know is fact. It is definitely a fact that the answers people are getting from both companies are very kind of cyclical and not a whole lot's being said. A lot of the answer is basically, well, they came into the country, so they must be legal. No, that's not how that works. Lots of things come into the country that aren't properly registered or paperworked or paid for or anything else. Just because something's here doesn't mean it got here legally. Hell, there's tons of drugs in America. Pretty sure none of those came here legally. Only time will tell how this will all shake out. But it seems to me that Pioneer Arms did not do their research on the PSL, and that Centerfire jumped the gun in marketing these. The thing is, if they had approval to sell straight surplus PSLs with a 3-pin receiver, they would have a letter from ATF's tech branch approving this for resale to the civilian market. And if they had this letter, they would very easily produce it or at least acknowledge its existence, which they are not doing. When people ask for any kind of letter from the ATF, they're basically responding with, we can't show you the Form 6. No. The Form 6 is not approval. Not at all. Approval would be a wholly separate set of paperwork from a wholly different department. Customs handles these things when they come in. You need something from ATF Tech Branch if you're importing a new model or asking to import a new model. Do they have that paperwork? If they do, they're sure not volunteering it. And with all the hullabaloo going on, you think that would be about the first thing they would do, at least to FFLs, because dealers now are kind of scared to do transfers on these, because who knows? Who knows? And they're being very cagey about it. And you would think a company that's been in business as long as Classic would at least know that an AK should only have 2 pins. I give them enough credit that I thought they understood how machine guns and semi-autos work, but maybe I am wrong. So we'll have to wait and see. But I wanted to acknowledge this about what's going on in case you have one at your dealers or put one on order. As of now, they have not relisted these on their website. They are telling people they were sold out, but people have come back with that saying no. When their website went down, when they pulled these, they still had at least 40, 50 left showing on the inventory. So something else is going on. Anyway, for more of my personal musings and speculations, check out my personal channel. I'll put up a video within the next day talking about that, but we try to keep it all factual around here, and I just wanted to talk about what makes a semi-auto Kalashnikov. And I know the PSL is not technically a Kalashnikov, AKM, it's a PSL, but it is a Kalashnikov action. It's just a big one. And so, as far as the ATF's concerned, this gun is the same as this gun when it comes to determining if it's an MG or not. It's just this fires 7.62 by 39 and this fires 7.62 by 54R. Still uses a long stroke piston, still has a 2-lug rotating bolt, has a thicker receiver, 1.5 mil, takes its own mags, has a bolt hold open, which is awesome, has a longer 24-inch barrel, but it's an AK as far as the ATF's concerned, much like a Vepr would be. But anyway, guys, just wanted to do a quick one here for you. Any questions or comments, or if you would like to put in what you've been told by Classic or Pioneer, please do so in the comments below, and we'll have a chat. And yeah, hopefully this gets straightened out, but at this time, who knows? Alrighty, guys, this is Misha. If you could, like, share, subscribe, and also check out the link to our Patreon page. Otherwise, Jay and I will catch you very soon next time.